to Philadelphia. Please tune your ear to Dave McCormick because I think we got to hold this seat. It's a Pat Toomey retirement, and Dave McCormick is the most electable conservative in the race. Good morning, Dave. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, good morning, Hugh. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm really honored by your endorsement. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I may be in trouble with you because I had Senator Cotton on, and I said, do you airborne guys in the 101st shake hands with each other in a secret way? He said, I think you just put Dave in the wrong division. He's 82nd Airborne, and that's where he got his Bronze Star. I said, oops, I hope he's still talking to me. So sorry about that. The 82nd and the 101st are very different divisions.
Yeah, for sure. Great soldiers and a great senator in Tom Cotton.
Dave McCormick, talk to me. The one thing I didn't know is I was getting ready to do the endorsement to the 8 people who live near Sharon on the Ohio border that listen to me. You got a PhD from Princeton. What was that in?
That was in international relations and economics, and it was at the time it was the transition out of the Cold War. So I wrote a dissertation that became a book about how to transform the military and how to make sure the military doesn't fight the last war, which sadly I'm afraid we're doing right now. But that was the focus.
I'm always curious. Mike Gallagher's got a PhD, and usually David Petraeus has one. I think General Mattis has one. People go back and they study this stuff when they're professional soldiers. When did you decide to stop being a professional soldier after the Iraq War?
Yeah, came back from the Iraq War. I went to another Army school, and I volunteered for Korea. And then in the midst of that, the Army asked me to think about going back to West Point and teach. And so I applied to graduate schools and then made the decision to leave the Army. So I just continued on the graduate school path after 5 years of active duty service.
Now, you have served in other administrations. Your wife served President Trump. I am curious about the race on the ground. Pennsylvania is 5 different states, and I try and explain this to people. And I know one of them very well since I grew up 7 miles from Sharon. But where is the race coming down to? Is it all about Philadelphia turnout at this point?
I don't think so. I think the western part of Pennsylvania, where I'm from, is really, really important. That comprises a high 20% of the vote. And so I think we'll have a good turnout in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, and that's a real boon for me. And the Northeast, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, where I spent a lot of time in my life, is also a really important market. So, Philadelphia's important, and we've spent a lot of time in Philadelphia. But all 5 of those markets are important. But I would say, particularly for me, not only Philadelphia, but also Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and the western part of the state.
Well, I'm on in all those places. Dave McCormick, I have a 4th grade granddaughter who is running for class secretary, so I helped her write her speech this weekend. I said, you have to ask people for their vote and tell them why you'd be good at the job. So make your pitch, Dave McCormick.
Yeah, thank you. Well, listen, I want to say, and I think you would agree, this Senate seat could not be more important. The stakes are so high because Pennsylvania needs a strong conservative fighter in the Senate, but this seat will also determine whether the Senate is led by conservatives and whether we have an opportunity to push back on the crazy extreme left that is taking our country in a terrible direction. And I feel that anger and that frustration and that fear wherever I go in Pennsylvania. And so we need a leader who shares the values of Pennsylvania conservatives, someone who is deeply connected to the state, and someone who can win this general election, because it's all about winning the general election and then going to Washington and being able to make a difference on day one, not needing on-the-job training. And so I'm somebody who's battle-tested. I've served for 9 years in the military. I'm a combat veteran. I created jobs in Pennsylvania. I was a CEO of a company in Pittsburgh that had 600 jobs. I then served at the highest levels of government. And I'm Pennsylvania true. I'm a 7th-generation Pennsylvania. I have a family farm in Bloomsburg where I grew up. And my family is in Pennsylvania. My friends are in Pennsylvania. So I'm deeply connected to the state. And I'm deeply worried that if we don't pick the right candidate, the right nominee for the Republican Party who has those values and is able to win, we're going to not only take Pennsylvania in a bad direction, we're going to take the country in the wrong direction. And that's why I'm running, because I feel like I've lived the American dream. I've been blessed by everything Pennsylvania has to offer and everything America has to offer. And that American dream's slipping away, and we need patriots to step up and take the fight to Washington, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Now, Dave McCormick, I've watched the race very, very closely. I've had every candidate on except Dr. Oz, who has repeatedly turned down opportunities to come on this program, which usually evidences to me they don't know what they're doing on the conservative side of the issues. But I am now concerned. Kathy Barnett is rising in the polls, and she's a nice lady. I had her on the show. She's got sparkling charisma. But in the last couple of days, the Philadelphia Inquirer has unearthed her tweets and her record. And I don't think it's a Christine O'Donnell situation, a Todd Aiken situation. How much does electability matter to Pennsylvania primary voters?
Well, listen, I've gotten to know Kathy on the campaign trail, and I like her. I respect and admire her personal story. But she's been tested already. She was tested a little less than 2 years ago when she ran for a congressional seat in Pennsylvania, and she lost by 20 points. And so, listen, the stakes on this are so high for the general election because it'll be the biggest race in the country. We need a candidate, a Republican candidate that has credibility, has been tested, deeply vetted, can assemble the resources and the team necessary to win. This is going to the Super Bowl, the moment we go into this general election. And so that's why when I'm on the campaign trail, I'm making that case. I honestly, Hugh, when I walk out of a room, I rarely walk out of a room where I don't see heads nodding and people see that my background and experience is unique for this moment in terms of being able to win the general and being able to have huge impact in Washington. And people realizing that I will be the only candidate in the race that can win the general election. Because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at our Republican nominee, and I'm ready for that fight.
That is exactly what's going to happen. And if I'm watching on election night, and I don't know if I'll be on Fox or wherever, I'll be on Special Report tonight. I hope the Pennsylvania Senate race comes up, and I'll disclose I've endorsed you, Dave McCormick. But once you win, I think you're going to win the primary. I think you're going to win the general. Once you win, you've served at the highest levels of the federal government, but you know that the Senate's a pretty weird institution, right? Pat Toomey has been a great senator for Pennsylvania, as Rick Santorum was. You're pro-life, you're just like those guys. How do you think you'll do in the Senate? You're a CEO, and the Senate isn't run by CEOs, though Mitch McConnell comes close to being a CEO. It's really 51 CEOs in the majority.
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, the issues of this moment are issues where I have a unique ability to, I think, contribute. So when I'm driving across Pennsylvania, inflation is the number one thing on the minds of the people I deal with, and I'm seeing the Pennsylvanians, working families, elders on fixed income, small businesses, they're getting killed by inflation. Energy policy and unlocking the energy opportunity in Pennsylvania, which is incredible, and the war on energy by Biden's killing us, and secure borders. Open border policies are killing Pennsylvanians with fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis, crime in our sanctuary cities. So that's the agenda that I'll be able to jump and contribute on day one. And I know what to do about inflation. I mean, I've created jobs. I've run 2 companies. I've been at senior levels of economic policy. I know how to engage on these issues with credibility that I think will be unique in our caucus, unique among the senators that are there. And then I also have the military experience. And if you think about the world today, Hugh, and how we're being tested on the global stage, it's at the intersection of economic policy and national security policy. And there's no one in the Senate who has both those military credentials and experience and that economic policy. So and finally, and I'll say this, I'm not going there. I'm a practical guy. I've had success by finding a way to cooperate with others, but I'm not going there to make friends. I'm going there because I think our current path is deeply misguided. And I think we need people like me who are outsiders, who have no obligations to anyone other than the voters, to really push our country back in the direction that we need to take it. So that's the agenda that I'll take to Washington.
2 quick questions, Dave. I've been pushing for a long time that the Philadelphia shipyard needs to be renovated and part of the rebuild of the United States Navy, and I've been warning for a long time that John Fetterman is not an insignificant opponent. We got a minute. What do you say on those 2 things?
Agree with you on the first thing. Couldn't agree more. I also think we need an LNG port in Philadelphia, around Philadelphia, to get our natural gas to the world. It's a bountiful resource. On John Fetterman, listen, I don't take anybody lightly. And I think John Fetterman is an extremist. He's left of Bernie Sanders with his socialist agenda, but he's got a following. And he needs someone to go head-to-head with him who can show why the ideas he's promoting are a disaster for our country, and someone whose biography is a direct contrast to his. And mine is a combat veteran, West Point grad, compared to him as a trust fund baby and Harvard grad is a good contrast.
Dave McCormick, I hope everyone in Pennsylvania is listening. Everyone votes.